Welcome to Discovering Star Trek. It's Entertainment Talks podcast for Star Trek Discovery on CBS All Access and Netflix. I'm your host Matthew, and this is for Season 3, Episode 5, Die Trying. I thought this was another good episode of Star Trek, Star Trek Discovery. I thought that the pacing here was pretty good. I thought this episode had some really good character moments. Obviously, we get the introduction to the Federation characters and this new admiral and this interesting sickbay situation, and a bit of conflict in terms of Michael and Saru trying to get some sort of level of authority, and the admiral wasn't really having it, at least at the start of the episode. We do know that obviously once we get to the end of the episode, things are a bit more agreed and settled upon, and the Admiral's got some theories of his own about the whole burn situation, the big deal that happened a little while ago. I thought it was a good episode. I did have a few structural issues with the episode, but it was only in a couple of scenes and there's not too much else to mention there. But there's a few times they cut back and forth a little bit between the ship and this other area that they went to, but nothing to like massively kind of complain about or whatever. It's just that Star Trek Discovery hasn't really had those sorts of problems, those sorts of structural problems, but there was just a little bit too much cutting back and forth between those, but nothing too terrible to sort of mention. A couple of interesting character moments in this episode as well. Detmer has another sort of moment. By the way, I've been trying to work out how exactly to pronounce her name, and I've been saying Denver and Detver or whatever. It's Detmer, so she's the pilot, of course, and she has another moment in this episode when the Discovery is being attacked and whatnot, and she's trying to sort that out, and she just there's a moment where she sort of blurs things out, and that I couldn't quite tell if that was like a moment of panic or if that was connected to what's been going on with her, because as I mentioned last week, at the end of last week's episode, Hugh was going around talking to all the crew and saying about do you need to talk, and kind of giving some emotional support, which was the big chunk of last week's episode. And she says to Hugh that yes, we'll have a chat, but obviously they had the cinema thing to do and all that, the surprise thing from Saru, which was good. Actually, it wasn't from Saru, was it? It was from someone else. But yeah, they revisit that kind of in this episode. Philippa certainly has a strange moment in this episode as well. I thought that was interesting. There's a theory going around online. I've seen a couple of people talk about this, that there's some sort of, not complete simulation, but some things aren't quite as they seem, perhaps. I think that's an interesting thing to kind of do. You've got to be very, very careful if you do something like that, though. I remember when, actually I don't want to say what show it was for because that would kind of be a spoiler, but there was a show which had a season a few years ago, and they did like a simulation type of thing. You might not know what show I'm talking about if I haven't mentioned it. I don't want to mention what show it was just because it's a bit of a spoiler for that particular show. And sometimes just sort of simulations, or where you've kind of lied to the audience a little bit, or sort of backtracked a little bit on your story, it can have a massive kind of impact. So that if that is the case, I don't know myself. I don't know. There's certainly some weird things going on. Like Philippa's reaction to Michael in this episode was really strange. I know that she can be a bit of a character sometimes, Philippa, for quite entertaining scenes, granted. But yeah, she has this long chat with this guy with the glasses or whatever, and she's messing about with his badge, and she breaks it, and she tries to do things with it or whatever. She was just particularly strange in this episode, I thought, and obviously her kind of spacing out at the end of the episode I thought was really quite weird and interesting. I actually thought that she'd seen something really shocking that had happened and the camera was going to kind of pan over to it, but no, she just sort of froze. It was very, very strange. I don't know what that's about necessarily, but then she kind of acts to Michael as if like nothing's happening, and she has she doesn't kind of do the TV thing of something weird's going on, I'm gonna walk away from this camera, from the character, sorry, so that the camera's facing me but the other character's to my back, and I'll like smile at the camera as if something's up. She didn't really do anything like that. Like if a character's betrayed somebody or something and they'll walk away from the character but sort of smile, not directly into the camera as like a fourth wall break, but sort of smile. She didn't really give any indication. She just sort of snapped out of whatever was happening and just walked away and was like, what's up with you, Michael? And I think Michael had the same reaction that all of us probably would, which was, well, what the hell was that? But yeah, weird, interesting, really cool stuff. I'm really intrigued as to know with Detmer and with Philippa certainly what is going on there, because there's just this feeling, I've just got this feeling now that not everything is quite as it seems in the season. I don't know, maybe it's to do with the whole burn thing that happened, and there's clearly also, given Saru in the Admiral's conversation, there's clearly some mix-up as to kind of what the rules are, and like you've done a crime and all this, and we're gonna separate the crew. Really, really glad they didn't do that, by the way. I was, as soon as he said that, and like the crew started to panic, and everyone started to freak out, and I sort of thought, you don't want to. I don't want to mention which show. You don't want to do what another show's doing this season, because sometimes that can really damage your show. And I don't mean to sound too dramatic, because obviously the way I said that was quite dramatic, but yeah, if you go from a show that's supposed to be an ensemble cast, which this is, and you start separating characters into groups, and you don't see characters for 2 or 3 weeks, and then the story goes on that way, that can be pretty damaging to your story. So I'm really glad that didn't happen. Yeah, I'm very, very glad that they didn't do that, because I know that obviously they've got different departments that they work in. Like you've got Stamets, and I think it's Jack or Jackie, and Tilly, and they're in the engineering room, and you have the main part of the ship, which has got all the captains and the pilot and number one, which is, you know, Michael and everything. So I know that characters are already in different sections, but like separating them in the story doesn't often do anything good. So I'm glad that didn't happen. Let's take a small little break here. We'll go into a quick version of the housekeeping, and I'll be back in a minute to talk about the rest of the episode.
Hey there, I'm Aaron Holman, host of Eye to Eye, a weekly podcast talk show all about passion.
I have this passion and this fire within me that burns brighter than the fire around me.
Flow.
With performing, there's always a story to tell, whether it's my own or not.
And creativity.
I go, he's more than cute, he's creative.
All with an LGBT twist. Make sure to check out Eye to Eye, that's EYE, number 2, letter I. And rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in today.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are Killer Fun. We explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week.
For as long as people have been communicating, they have been talking about who did what to whom, and is that socially acceptable?
Because the boundaries of society,
crime,
and entertainment have always gone hand in hand.
The more salacious,
weird,
the better. From books and movies
to television shows and games,
we look at how life and art imitate and inform one another.
And we can't get together and not laugh. So let's face it, there's going to be laughing.
Killer Fun is available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so join us.
If you'd like to get started with a domain name and a website today, just click on the link in the show notes and that will take you over to Koalu to get started. They also have a live support chat system that you can use, which is in the bottom right hand corner. So get started with a new website and domain name today with Koalu. Hey everybody, if you would like to get the ad-free versions of all of our podcasts and support Entertainment Talk along the way, all you need to do is head over to patreon.com/entertainment talk. Sign up either as a creator or as a Patreon. There's no difference there. That's just the option for either becoming a creator now or just staying as a patron for the moment. And then all you need to do is support us at the $1 level tier. That will get you access to all of the ad-free podcasts that we've done in the past, and get you access to all the ad-free podcasts in that month as well. So it's a great way to support us on Entertainment Talk and to get rid of the ads and get your ad-free podcasts. You can also become a patron at the $3 level tier. That gets you access to ad-free podcasts and allows you to redeem a review of a TV show or a film of entirely your choice. That's one per month for either a TV show or a film review, which is at the $3 level tier. As always, thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. Alright, recently on Entertainment Talk, we got our gaming podcast this week. We talked about the Avengers game losing money, Mass Effect being remastered, the trilogy, of course, from BioWare and EA is being remastered next year. We talked about some other stuff as well, Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass, and some big additions, things added to Game Pass, so we talked about that. Double Walking Dead is still going on at the moment, Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead World Beyond. Of course, me and David over on The Walking Dead World Beyond, and myself doing the solo podcast on Fear, so you can check out those if you watch those shows as well. We do, of course, cover the main show, but it's not on at the moment. Did the Season 1 feedback podcast for Breaking Bad. You guys and women sent in some emails, or the audience sent in some emails and some feedback for the first season. Of course, there was the first 7 episodes for the season, and we read out some of those, gave our own extended kind of thoughts on the first season of Breaking Bad. So if you're curious about that, or if you missed them or whatever, they're of course all available now, and we'll be back at some point in 2021 to talk about season 2. We don't know when yet, but we're pinning that in for 2021 for season 2 for Breaking Bad. Did the Enola Holmes review. Enola Holmes, of course, the sister of the famous Sherlock Holmes. In that film, Sherlock Holmes is played by Henry Cavill, and Enola Holmes, the actual main character of the film, is played by Stranger Things' Millie Bobby Brown, who plays Elle, the main character in that show. So that was pretty cool to do. Just some other stuff we got as well on entertainmenttalk.org. Man United podcast. There's an international break at the moment, but Manchester United did beat Everton 3-1 away from home, which was very good, and club football will be back soon. But that's pretty much everything we've been doing on entertainmenttalk.org and on podcast platforms. I did think it was quite good that we actually met the Federation, and we saw this Admiral. Didn't particularly like him. I think that he's warming a bit to the Discovery crew, and it's obviously a little bit difficult. One kind of thing that they sort of slot into this episode and then never mention is they do see, is it a version of the ship of the Voyager, which is one of the older ships from one of the older series, of course. Yeah, that was an interesting little... I don't know if that was intended to be like an Easter egg or a little sort of callback or something, but they don't like go on the ship, do they? No. But yeah, that was an interesting little sort of callback as well. That was fairly good. So that was interesting. Nam had a big episode this week. Of course, she's decided to stay behind with her family, and she wants to go back to her home planet, or back to her home, which is quite nice and quite good. Not one of the biggest characters in the series, but still one that I certainly did care about. I think that might be a decent exit for her. Perhaps, maybe she could come back at some point in the future. Ash left, didn't he? Ash Tyler left at a certain point. Was that last season? I think that was last season, wasn't it? In season 2. So yeah, Nam is happy to do this and to kind of stay behind and sort of move on and try to reconnect with her family. And I thought Hugh as well was brilliant in this episode. Wilson, I think it's Wilson Cruz who plays him. Follow him on Twitter. He does some pretty cool stuff over there. He was brilliant in this episode as well. He's sort of like the emotional support crutch for the entire crew. I mean, we saw last week when he went round and asked everybody how they were. I really like him. He's a fantastic character. Paul was good in this episode as well, but I think the Michael, Hugh and Nam scenes were some of the best in the episode. Of course, Michael the most heavily involved. She's there with the crew when they go to visit the Starfleet and all that with this new admiral and stuff, so that was good. Overall just happy where they went with the direction this week in the episode. Moving forward in the season, they have of course pushed the plot a bit more forward this week because of who we met and what happened there. I think eventually the show's got to kind of address... There's two things I'd like to see addressed in the show. First of all is the continuous mention that the Discovery is old and it's 1,000 years old or whatever, and one of the other people from the Starfleet ship that beams to the Discovery ship in this episode kind of mentions like, oh, I hope you can kind of get this fossil moving or whatever. And they've been talking about the Discovery this way for the entire series so far, and even Saru mentioned it about how old the tech is and stuff. I would just like to see, it's getting a little bit old, just to see almost every episode someone say like, oh, this ship's really old, the tech's outdated, are you sure you can do this mission or whatever? And there's always the doubt cast upon the group, especially in this episode from the Starfleet characters, about like, oh, you know, we'll sort of train our own crew to come over to you and do the job for you, kind of thing. I think that needs to be addressed at some point. It's getting a little bit old just hearing every week about like how old the ship is. We know, we're aware, the characters are aware, everyone knows. And I mean, it probably won't happen until season 4, maybe, when they can have some sort of refresh. I do think that the time jump that they do at the start, or between seasons 2 and 3, or at the end of season 2, whatever, that could have been a good opportunity to kind of refresh things a bit, and they didn't. So that's a little bit disappointing, but it's something that gets brought up all the time, so I thought I'd mention it again. And then, of course, the last thing, just whatever's going on with Detmer and with Philippa. I wonder if any other characters are going to start to react weirdly to, well, we don't know to what yet, because we saw in the season premiere episode, Detmer was having like a weird reaction to certain things, and Philippa was as well. I don't know, it does tie in interestingly with the simulation kind of theories. Maybe there's only certain characters involved, maybe it's something to do with the burn or the time jump, or both. I don't really know necessarily. Those are my only kind of guesses, is it's to do with something with them. It'd be very interesting to see if they do have any other characters kind of act a bit weirdly. So we'll see. But I do think the moment that Detmer has in this episode is to do with the sort of stress of flying the Discovery, and they were under attack and all that, or whatever was sort of happening. So yeah, very curious as to explore that a bit more. Heck, they could take a bottle episode and just explain that if they want to, and just kind of explore it a little bit more. I hope that they don't wait too much longer in the series, in the season. I know we're only on episode 5 and we've got 13, but we'll see how all that sort of goes as well. What else did I want to discuss? Yeah, going forward, not really sure what they're going to do next. Again, we're kind of in one of them situations. I think it was the same as last week's episode, or one of the episodes in the season, but there's no immediate next thing to sort of happen, because we had, I think, in the season premiere and the second episode, like immediate next things that were happening, like the reunion and everything. So we'll see. I mean, we took a step forward in this episode. We met the is it Federation? I always forget what they're called. Starfleet, whatever. We met them. That's great. You can use those characters again next week, probably. So we'll see what happens. But what did you think of this episode of Star Trek Discovery? What do you think is going on with with Philippa and Detmer? What do you think is happening there? Do you think that there's different reasons they may be reacting weirdly? Because it was clearly triggered by something in this episode in terms of Philippa, because she's been fine the rest of the season. I mean, she's still been quirky and funny and whatever. She's Philippa. That's just what she's like. But yeah, curious to know what the audience thinks is going on with those two. Do you think it's something different? Do you think it's the same thing? Do you think it's something to do with the simulation theory? Or, I don't know, something else? Let me know your thoughts. How do you feel about this season? What do you think of the new Admiral? What do you think of Starfleet? And what do you think of Nam potentially leaving the series? I haven't seen it confirmed or not confirmed, if she is or isn't leaving, if it's a temporary thing, or I don't know. We'll see how things go. But let me know your thoughts, feelings, questions, comments, or maybe concerns about Star Trek Discovery or anything related to Entertainment Talk. Matthew at entertainmenttalk.org, Twitter eTalkUK. There's a contact page and information in your show notes. But good episode, well paced, a few little structure problems here and there, but nothing too terrible. They got past it anyway. Great character moments in the episode. Really liked Hugh in this episode as well. He's one of my favourite characters, definitely, and I will really like Wilson Cruz. He's very nice as well. So there we go. We'll be back, or I'll be back next week for episode 6, Scavengers. Just a note on the episodes here. It's got 1 through 8 kind of normally been named, and then episodes 9 and 10, Terra Firma. That's the episode that's given for both episodes 9 and 10, but they are not a double episode because it's got a December 10th and December 17th date. So that's not like a double sort of episode. Whether it's Terra Firma Part 1 and Part 2, we still never got the That Hope Is You Part 2, episode either. We just had that as the season premiere, and that was it. And then you got the last 3 episodes, which finished on January 7th. So we'll see what that is all about when that happens as well. Maybe that's just a Wikipedia error. I don't know. We'll see when we get further on in the series, in the season. That's not going to be for a few weeks anyway. So, but anyway, thanks for listening to this particular podcast. You can find everything else that we do on entertainmenttalk.org. If you like what you've heard today and you want to support it and get involved more, that would be brilliant. There's lots of different things that you can do. The first of all is check out our Patreon page. If you search for Entertainment Talk on Patreon, there's the $1 and $3 level tiers for instant ad-free podcast and review options. Amazon affiliate link if you're buying those Christmas presents or treating yourself, or both, or whatever the situation may be. We can get a small cut of what you spend. It won't cost you extra. iTunes feeds and podcast services, you can have a look for us on there. Just search for Entertainment Talk and you can get yourself subscribed. Please also remember to rate and review the feed as well. That would be very, very helpful. If we're not on your favourite podcast platform, please let us know. You can also find Geektown, run by David, of course, on iTunes and everything else as well, or by going to geektown.co.uk. So that would be great. And you can also, geektown.co.uk, Geektown Radio on Tuesdays, new episodes of Geektown Radio episodes on Tuesdays as well. You can find Bex on Twitch, streaming daily. Trista Bytes, Trista, BYTES, go and follow her over there. That would be great. What's the other thing? I'm streaming on Twitch as well. If you want to watch me play some Pro Evolution Soccer Master League or fight zombies in VR or any of the other games that I'm going to be playing, you can search for eTalk UK on Twitch. Get yourselves followed to that as well. Word of mouth, you can tell people that you know about Entertainment Talk, Trista Bytes and Geektown. Social media, same thing, Facebook, Twitter and different Facebook groups. And look out for Let's Play Sundays as well. Thanks for listening and I will see you next time. Goodbye.